Welcome to my channel, KC, that's me, Carrie Chuck, the Sledge storyteller, here to talk about the wonderful world of storytelling and to open up discussion about how we can tell the best stories we can in talking about superhero movies, everything good and bad from a storytelling standpoint. Now, after all I had been saying about Batman films, I have to talk about how my outlook on them evolved over time. It's important to understand in the 80s and 90s, you felt super lucky to see any superhero movies, let alone Batman movies. I considered the previous films a blessing, and felt desperate for any new one to come out, and the very thought that Batman and Robin had destroyed the franchise terrified me. There was talk of another sequel coming out that would embrace the darker premise we saw in the previous movies, this time with the Scarecrow as the villain, but gradually I did manage to swallow the bitter pill that was the fact that, at that point, the Batman movie franchise was dead and buried, and started to warm up to the prospect of a new franchise that started with kind of the year one premise, a hero's journey story movie, that they would cast someone more physically qualified as well. Well, subsequent news followed of a year one movie in development that turned out to be a bizarre interpretation, with a homeless Bruce befriending an auto mechanic named Big Al, a spin on Alfred who soups up a Cadillac to be Bruce's Batmobile. Not what I want as a movie, but I would love to read that as an Elseworlds comic with that premise. Then there was talk of Batman v Superman, the movie. Now, this was back in 2002, mind you, and that project suddenly tanked. But it was the next year that we started getting news of development of a movie that we now know as Batman Begins. Now, I better re-emphasize that in these reviews of Batman movies, I start out with the bad so I can end on a positive note. Flaws that I see in Batman Begins start with, villain name pronunciation. I had come to love the sound of the name Ra's al Ghul, and as indicated earlier in this video, I was excited to see that he was included in this movie. But I remember having to make a major mental adjustment upon first hearing Liam Neeson utter Ra's al Ghul. Now I know that this villain's name is Arabic, and that this movie's pronunciation of it is accurate in other Arabic dialects. It just does not resonate as much as Ra's al Ghul. On the other hand, pronouncing Falcone's name as Falcone, I didn't think that was that much of a big deal, seeing how first it wasn't that drastic of a change, and second, when watching The Godfather, the family name is pronounced Corleone in the scene set in the US, but later pronounced Corleone in the scene set in Sicily. It makes perfect sense to me that some Italian families might choose to stick with their native name pronunciations. Christian Bale's Batman voice, yes, it does occasionally hit a sour note. Things feel a little scrunched when our understanding of economic hardship in Gotham City is hinged heavily on exposition. Then what becomes a moral conundrum is a scene where Bruce is defiant toward the order given to him by the man he knows as Ducard to execute the League of Shadows prisoner, and yet you can hardly figure out how his life might have still been spared amidst all the explosive destruction of the League stronghold caused by Bruce. But he managed to save the life of his mentor. Now, the makers of the console game that was based on this movie, they seem to pick up on that issue, and what you see happen there is the prisoner escapes alongside Bruce Wayne. I wish they had just used other words for fear every other time they referenced it. But none of these are deal breakers. So first, and I don't doubt many saw this coming, finally this guy you see on screen gets what he had been asking for 8 years. I've been reading the comics where such artists as Tim Sale, Graham Nolan, Ed McGuinness, and Jim Lee drew him looking built like a tank, and wanted more and more to see a back actor put on some bulk. I didn't dare expect the next actor getting that role to have the level of bulk as rendered by the aforementioned artist. So I was thinking along the lines of such sleeker renditions by such artists as Neil Adams, Jim Aparo, Dave Mazzucchelli, and Steve Lieber. Now, beyond simple machismo, I've always had an appetite for the imagery of a hero who's a product of his own hard work, coupled with scenes of that hard work at play. When I saw the official announcement that Christian Bale had been cast as Batman, I knew we were getting that kind of Batman, knowing that he had bulked up for such films as American Psycho and Reign of Fire. But okay, that's common knowledge. What reasoning do I have for my bold initial statement? Now in this film, Bruce Wayne, fresh out of Princeton, and in spite of the tragedy he suffered with his parents' murder, he never loses that silver spoon in his mouth up to that point. So that aspect of Bruce here is the same one we saw in all previous Bat actors going back to Adam West. What's different here is that Bale's Bruce gets the big wake-up call when Carmine Falcone shoved right into his face how his tragedy was nothing compared to the long-term hardships others have experienced. Bruce's response: he sets aside all his wealth and stows away on a cargo ship and forced himself to learn survival while living homeless throughout Asia, learning to live off the street. Also during this time, he pushes himself to gain greater fitness and combat skill, ripening himself to where Ducard, ultimately Ra's al Ghul, plucks him out of a Bhutanese prison to refine his mind and body to the zenith. This phase is all about personal struggles and progression. The everyman. But beyond that, Bale nails the character from all fronts. The pre-Batman Bruce Wayne looking for an outlet for his bitterness. The renewed Bruce Wayne who has found new direction. The public playboy Bruce Wayne. And the tough-as-nails Batman. And I have to say that his utterance of those words,
I'm Batman.
trumps.
I'm Batman. You see, I'm both Bruce Wayne and Batman.
Hi, Freeze. I'm Batman.
Okay, that last one's a little too easy. One other factor that I felt dissatisfied with in previous movies, that being Batman's relationship with James Gordon, was well addressed here. It helped that they start Gordon's place in the movie's present day, where he felt like he had no true ally to stand alongside him to play it straight in the war on crime in the city of Gotham. A dilemma exhibited well with Mark Boone Jr.'s depiction of the corrupt Lieutenant Flass. Bruce makes the bold move, getting Gordon's attention as he feels he has to. He lays out what he wants to see accomplished in the war on crime, and it leads to some unintentional injury. Then, after Falcone and his cronies on the docks get trounced, Bruce knows he can, as Batman, have a strategic conversation with Gordon now and gain an understanding of where they stand with each other.
Mission Alone set up a massive task force to catch you. He thinks you're dangerous.
What do you think?
I think you're trying to help.
Amid the story's escalation, Bruce enlists Gordon's help.
Downstairs. Meet me in the alley on the narrow side.
Then you have that last moment of high trust.
What do you need?
Can you drive stick?
And it would be a gross injustice to leave out Michael Caine's performance of Alfred. And I like that this movie had upgraded him as well. Here, Alfred is exactly what he should be at the key moments: sympathetic, supportive, and pragmatic. I have to say that this is the strongest Bruce and Alfred relationship thus far. And I can't ignore Morgan Freeman's Lucius Fox. I remember feeling very excited when they announced that he had been added to the cast. Admittedly, I had to make another mental adjustment when I found out that this would not be Lucius Fox, the CEO who got the job after his financial wizardry untangled Wayne Enterprises' monetary woes, like in the comics, but would be the redefined Lucius Fox, whose technological wizardry would be the brains behind all of Wayne Enterprises' high-tech wonders, and that would filter into the Bat gadgets. And it becomes intuitive that you'd want a proven voice in making otherwise boring subject matter sound engaging to cover all the big technobabble.
Kevlar utility harness, gas-powered magnetic grapple gun, the 350-pound test monofilament, Nomex survival suit for advanced infantry, Kevlar bi-weave, reinforced joints.
Now, everyone following the progress of the movie felt blindsided by the casting of Gary Oldman as Jim Gordon, given his extensive history of playing villains in Mad Men, but after director Christopher Nolan took the Batman-Gordon relationship to the next level in the story, Oldman helped it get elevated even higher with an awesome performance as a straight-laced cop feeling that there's no one he can trust. Liam Neeson started his performance here as Ducard with a flavor of being a somewhat shady Qui-Gon Jinn, only to turn out to be Ra's al Ghul himself, going by Ra's al Ghul, playing both sides of his character brilliantly. Cillian Murphy gives you the feel for that type who's looking to compensate for his lack of power to dominate those around him and uses underhanded methods to accomplish that. And I just love where down in Arkham's basement with Rachel Dawes being held captive, when he's realizing that Batman's in the building, he's feeling cocky after having subdued him before, that he would do it again, only for Batman to clean house, break in, and that leads to...
Taste of your own medicine, Doctor. Who are you working for?
Katie Holmes as Rachel Dawes functions okay as a voice of reason. Her not being that interesting as a character, I'd say, is mainly because Christopher Nolan and writer David Goyer didn't seem to know how to best work her into the story, and also being the obligatory love interest to Bruce. Tom Wilkinson functions well as mob boss Carmine Falcone, who knows the exact extent of his sphere of influence and is very convincingly intimidating. And Mark Boone Jr. makes the role of the crooked cop Lieutenant Flass work very well. I remember first seeing imagery of the Tumbler Batmobile and fearing it would be a clunker as wide and heavy as it looked. But man, it was high octane in its speed and maneuverability. Didn't need a grappling hook to make a sharp turn. It's my current favorite version. I've already said that I love Danny Elfman's Batman theme, but I totally go more for Hans Zimmer's. His Batmobile theme is so empowering. I love the action feel of the music running with Batman's breaking out of Arkham and the build-up from what you might call the movie's elevator music. Forgive the pun, couldn't resist, but like so many other great scores, its softer moments undercut the respective scenes beautifully. A lot of people gripe about the shaky cam fight scenes, especially when Batman clears the docks, but I love the feel of Batman's complete control of the chaos in the middle of the crowd, and I feel like they pull back enough for subsequent fight scenes that get the adrenaline going. Overall, the story is so engrossing. I couldn't help but love that Roger Ebert's thumb finally went up after being down for all the previous Bat films.
And to get straight to the point, Batman Begins is the 5th Batman movie, but the first one to get it right, to get it absolutely right.
Followed by Richard Roper's.
And I love the first film that Tim Burton directed, but I still say this is the best Batman movie ever by far.
At the time leading up to when this movie was being made, I was where I wanted a better built Batman, a strong origin story, a closer working relationship with Gordon, and use of Ra's al Ghul down the road in a future movie. I never imagined that the next Batman movie after the implosion of the previous franchise would be bullseye on each one of those factors, even Ra's al Ghul. But that's my take on Batman Begins. Agree, disagree, something I left out? Please let me know in the comment section. If you like this video, please click like. If you like this channel, please click subscribe or follow me on Instagram. As always, the link to order Sledge number 1 and 2 through Indie Planet is in the description. Or you can order just Sledge number 1 on Kindle. Available in either format, digital or paper. Sledge number 3, it is underway. I still get good stuff from Thiago on a regular basis. He always has me excited. But as always, let's look for civility amid all the hate that's out there. Let's not look for enemies, let's look for friends. And I think that everybody can be a friend to anybody if they make the effort. But everyone be safe, and God bless.